Hello and welcome to another episode of Answers from the Stairs. I am the host, Chris Fester, and with me is I like to refer to him as one of my casket carriers. Um, because I feel like that when I go, he'll be one of the guys, assuming that Suzanne doesn't burn me up, that will be carrying my casket that day. My dear friend, Jim Sabellico. Thank you so much for your time today, sir.
My pleasure, sir. It's an honor. I,
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And the purpose of this podcast is to let everyone discuss their climb up the stairs of personal development, entrepreneurship, life in general, because that was kind of the purpose when I created that idea. Um, and I've asked everybody that's been here, like, what's your birthday?
You're asking me right now is
Yeah.
May 7, 1986.
So let's start there.
Sure.
1986, born where?
Yeah. Plainview.
Plainview.
Are you applying for credit in my name? Yeah. Born in New York.
Born
Stayed
in New
here
York.
ever since.
Gotcha. And you, from what I remember, are the youngest of how many kids?
Three.
Three. And there's a pretty big
Yeah.
gap between you and everybody else, right?
There's a 6 year gap between me and my older sister, and then a 8 year gap between me and my brother.
So, um, so tell me about that. Like, what's the earliest memory you have of where you became aware of that one thing? Like, there's this big difference in age between my siblings and myself, and like, when did you become aware of that? I guess.
I would say probably in like the 7 to 8 year old range is the earliest recollection I have of when that became like a thing. Most because like at that time, so I'm 8 years old. My brother is 16. He's got his driver's license. He's a junior in high school. He's out with his friends, and then he's driving my sister around. And then there was always me as like this 8 year old kid who was in a very different stage, and I was just kind of like left behind. And never in a malicious way, but as you know, with kids of your own, there's a lot of stuff going on, especially that age. It gets a little busier and more hectic. So for me, I spent most of my childhood as the tag along who's kind of like there. And I wound up, as a result of that, kind of having to almost have a very separate childhood experience. So my brother and sister grew up very close together, and they, to this day, they're like, "Oh, do you remember when we were kids and we used to do X, Y, and Z?" And then I'll be in the room just like, "Yeah, I wasn't there for that. I was either like 4 or 5 years old, or you guys did your own thing." So it was a very different childhood experience for me.
Gotcha. And by it being different and being that kind of a gap, what do you think that what did that pull out in you? What did it create in you at that age, at that 7 to 8, and you recognize that there's a difference? Like where did that put you? Because I mean, you just said I had a separate childhood experience. Was it truly a childhood experience, or was it where you said, you know what, I've got to be grown up quick?
Hmm.
Because
I
it's
definitely grew up way too quick. So you'll know, but for anyone who doesn't, my I started my first business at the age of 8 years old, cutting grass around the neighborhood. For that reason, because when I was an 8 year old kid in the summer, I was home and my brother and sister were supposed to be home watching me, but they would have, go out and hang out with their friends, and I was just there. So my options, I mean, this is like before iPads and YouTube. So my options were like sit home and read the same Calvin and Hobbes book over and over again, or go do something. And I was blessed with an example of really productive parents. So I was like, hey, let's go grab the lawnmower, walk around the neighborhood, and go make some cash. And that's what I did, making a couple $100 a week as an 8 year old kid. And to answer your question, up until like 4 or 5 years ago, I resented it a lot, most because it felt like I got gypped out of a childhood experience because most of the hands-on attention was with my brother and sister, and then I was kind of just like there. And then by the time it got to be my turn, everyone was so busy doing their stuff, I kind of didn't have the same handheld experience. Looking back on it now, like we always talk about connecting the dots backwards, it blessed me with a ton of independence. It blessed me with a very different perspective, and looking backwards, I wouldn't change it at all. I'm very grateful for it.
So you touched on the fact that it's, you had a lot of independence. Um, how did you see that play out? Because I mean, the first job, age 8, you're cutting grass, right? We're truly entrepreneurial early. And that's,
Yeah.
one of the common themes I'm seeing as I'm having these discussions with people, right? That they're entrepreneurial early because of some type of a, let's call it life situation, or circumstances. We'll call it
Right.
circumstances. So from 8 to 18, that 10 years, was that like, was,
That was wild. That was a wild 10 years, I'll tell you that.
tell me about that.
Um, I sold everything to everybody. Some of my favorite experiences, just because like there's a lot, we could have a 6 hour podcast on just this alone. Some of my favorite experiences were in high school. I used to walk people back to my house on lunch break and sell them wallpapers and ringtones on their phone for $20 a pop. Because that was like before you could just download it from an app store. Had this like special cable with a laptop, and I bought all this stuff with money I didn't know what to do with, and then used that to make more money. Um, I bought and sold more random things than you can ever possibly imagine. I had my hand in like literally everything, and it was a really interesting experience. But you talk about climbing the stairs to success. Like from the age of 8 to 18, I took the escalator 3 steps at a time because I got this like really early definition of material success. Where again, when you're an 8-year-old kid with a couple $100 a week in your pocket, literally no expenses, all you can do is be like, "Hey, mom, take me to the toy store. I'm going to buy whatever I possibly want," and there's not much you can say about it. I really thought that was like what success was. And I rode that momentum for a very long time, more than I really care to admit, up until like I realized that that wasn't success. Right? To me, I thought I had the Midas touch where I could jump into any business, sell anything to anybody, and be successful so I could, buy whatever car I wanted, have the house I wanted, have whatever toy I could possibly imagine. And to me, that was the definition of successful, which obviously I'm sure we'll get into what brought us here.
You said longer than you care to, that you stayed inside that, the idea of material success,
Yeah.
right? So I know that you and Cassandra have been married for how long now?
We've been married for 14 years, coming on 15.
I think it makes men nervous when I ask that question because their wives are going to be listening to this. Um,
I
but
actually remember that pretty well because we had a website, 9311.com. Uh, yeah, I had a website for it. But yeah, I just remember the domain name. It
yes,
helps.
what a great way to remember.
Hey,
Um,
whatever works.
right. Um, so she met you early in that stage because you just said 8 to 18, like I'm buying and selling and buying and selling. And I know you went to college,
Yeah,
and
allegedly.
yeah, you know, for what it's worth, like that's kind of what I always tell everybody about my college experience. Yeah, I learned my social security number really well.
Yeah.
Um, but coming out of college, did you guys meet there? Did you meet in that space, or was it after?
No, we met much later than that. Thank you for making me seem younger than I am, though. But yeah, we met after college. I, where do I want to take this story? So I had a full-time job. I owned a stereo shop. So installing stereos and window tint and wheels and tires for cars, doing custom car work. At the time, I was working like probably 85 hours a week. Had whatever cool car I wanted and all, again, the toys and the fun stuff. And one of my customers there actually invited me over to dinner at his house, and Cassandra happened to be the roommate there. And we always joke about it because she made pot roast that night, and her pot roast sealed the deal. It was that good, so we always recommend her pot roast as a can't miss. But yeah, we met kind of much after the early crazy stage. I was a little bit on the come down.
Gotcha. But still, 85 hours a week. Most people would say that's come down,
Yeah, fair.
right? In fact, that's, you said you were chasing that material. That's what I was trying to get to is like owning that shop where you're
Right.
pouring your entire time and life and attention into that. And then she comes into the space. So that's the only gym she's ever known, right? Is that until a few years ago? We're going to get to there. But that
Yeah.
first, that that early, I call him early gym, where it's like, this is what I'm called to do. I'm called to provide. I'm called to drive. I'm just like, this is what I've got to do. How did she adapt? Like, was that just like, that's just how it's going to be? Because,
Yeah. I didn't need her. This could sound wrong, so take it for it is. I didn't need her for anything. I was very self-sufficient. I think that carries over from my childhood where I didn't necessarily lean on other people for stuff because I was by myself, so I figured it out. So coming into that relationship, um, and bear in mind also not that this shouldn't sound like a brag, but I've never not had a relationship. I've gone from relationship to relationship with maybe like a 4 or 5 day gap in between. It's kind of just how I rolled. And not to sound like a brag, it wasn't like a womanizer by any means. There was probably 7 over the course of history, but it was just always a longer term thing for me. So I didn't really pursue her in the onset of that. Um, like I wasn't. Hmm, I'm trying to think of the best way to steer this conversation properly. I wasn't looking for everything she could provide other than, hey, this is a really awesome person. I could see myself building a family with her. That's awesome. Let's pursue that thought, right? Because she had this very natural ability to make everyone feel at ease. And so for me, and even though this sounds very surface level to admit now, I saw her ability to be an amazing mother, right? Almost as if you are the CEO of a company and you're prospecting a new employee and you're like, hey, that person would be amazing at this role. Let's bring them into the fold. When I met her and saw her ability to be an amazing mother, my first instinct at the time was, hey, this is amazing. I could bring her into the quote unquote team of me where I can continue to be me and go out and do all the stuff that I wanted to do personally. And then she could just be an amazing mother because I didn't know how to be a great father.
oh, that's
And
good.
so for me, I was like, hey, very strategically, yes, I love her. Let's not bypass any of that stuff. But she has this amazing skill set to be a great mom. Let's start building something together for that way. It was probably more strategic than I care to admit.
Gotcha. Does she know all that?
Yes.
Gotcha. So y'all have had that conversation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's at this point in our relationship, there's literally nothing to hide, which is a very fun feeling.
Well, I mean, when you first let someone know that they were hunted rather than fished for, the
Yeah.
hunted down part of it. So I think that's an important conversation. But that you talked about being hugely independent to the point that making her part of the team of you.
Yeah.
Like that's a good insight into what your thought processes were at that age as an early entrepreneur. Like, just like, it's just me. Am I
Yep.
fair to say that?
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean,
Gotcha.
again, that's what I spent the past. At that point, I met her at 26, so you know, for 18 years there, I spent on my own doing whatever I wanted and reaping the rewards for myself, and everyone else kind of just they were along for the ride and the party.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do want you to share with those that are listening how that shifted, because I think that's important. And I think that's
Yeah.
if there's a if there's a how those stairs that you climb and they light up as you're climbing.
Hmm.
I think the stair that I see in your story is the one that lights up is what you based your podcast on. No half cakes. So,
Right.
like, please share that story.
Okay. So let's start that story by continuing the last one of me again recruiting her into the team of Jim because she was an awesome mom. And I don't say any of this to belittle my dad at all, but what he did was he took the best of what he got from his dad and went out and he was the best father that he could be. And what he did was provide for his family. So the example that he set that I received, okay, and very want to be clear with that. It wasn't his intention to say, hey, this is how you be a dad. But I followed in his footsteps, his example, right? Caught, not taught. He would be out of the house at 6 in the morning, working every day, come home, maybe see us before we went to bed, maybe not. So I didn't spend a lot of like quote unquote quality time hanging out with dad. And when he was home, he was generally watching baseball, reading a book, doing a crossword puzzle, or coaching baseball for my brother. So he spent a lot of time coaching my brother's sports. And again, that age gap comes into play there. So he was more involved heavily in my brother's sports than me. I was, again, just kind of like, I was the bat boy. I was just there. So I say all that to say, when we had our first kid, my son Joseph, my example of what it meant to be a dad was provision, right? So you're gonna I thought to myself, and I remember this moment vividly. My wife coming home from work because she worked right up until the time that she gave birth. She came walking in the living room. She's got two tote bags, one on each arm, and she says, "I don't care if I have to eat peanut butter and jelly for the rest of my life. I am not working anymore." And at that point, she was really just frustrated because she was 9 months pregnant and she was exhausted. But in my head, I'm like, all right, game on, challenge accepted. You can do all this fun stuff when you're a kid. Like, let's now really level up. You're about to be a dad. It's time to take it to a whole new level. And what I did instead of being a great dad was I was like, all right, let me provide even harder. So I left even earlier, came home even later. And for the first 6 years of my son's life, what I did was provide. And I was basically just a line of credit for my wife. I did not help her really in any other way. Like, yeah, I was around on the weekends and I'd change diapers and do whatever else, but like, I didn't really know what to do with a kid. It just, I wasn't given that skill set. I had no idea what to do, but I knew I was good at the making money part. So I was going to lean heavily into that. And I did that for 6 years, very literally 6 years, because October 29th of 2019, 8:45 p.m., I come home. It's my son's sixth birthday. And again, 8:45 at night. And if you ask me what I was doing up until 8:45 at night that kept me out of the house, I legit couldn't tell you. I have no idea what was so important that I wasn't home. But whatever it was, at the time I thought it was. And I'm like, all right, cool. It's Joseph's birthday. Let's sing happy birthday before he goes to bed. And my wife at that point pulls out this half-eaten birthday cake and puts it on the table. And she's exhausted because she's been dealing with he had his friends over early in the day. She's like, all right, let's light it up and sing happy birthday. And I remember that moment thinking like, what am I doing? Like, this is not success. I can't claim to be successful if the woman standing next to me, I barely know who it is anymore. I have no relationship with. I'm in the worst physical shape of my life. I really don't see my kids a lot. Like maybe waking hours, I don't know, 6 hours a week, I see them. What am I doing? Like, yes, I have whatever money I could possibly want. I have whatever car, house, toy, blah, blah, blah. I got the stuff. But like standing there in front of a half-eaten birthday cake, I'm like, this is not successful. Um, and that was when I really like had that quote unquote no half cake moment where I realized this is not a thing I want to ever repeat. So standing there and I have that picture, I have the video, it's literally the wallpaper of my phone. I see it 1,000 times a day. I remind myself that I'm not accepting half cake moments in any part of my life, right? So if I'm going to be a truly successful person, it means being successful in terms of your finance, your relationship, your emotion, your spirituality, your physical fitness, like in all of those areas of your life, not accepting half. But to me, true success is like the pursuit of excellence in all of those areas.
Like, and you and I spend a lot of time together. So I know that's exactly where your heart's at. And I see you live that out like with a ton of integrity.
Thank you.
How easy or hard was that shift? I mean, like you said, I made that decision that day, but that's a lot of time spent in grind.
Yeah.
And with the idea of what success is that you've just been living out this idea of material success, providing the best you can in a great way, right? So, you hear people all the time say, well, I'm trying to break the habit of this. Well, you literally broke your lifestyle.
Mm.
And what I mean by that, it's not your, I mean, you broke your idea of what success looks like. So
Yeah.
walk me through what that looked like. I mean, I love that story. I've heard that story, but you and I've never talked about how hard or easy. I don't know, because we've not ever asked you that question before.
Yeah.
Was it to get out of half cakes and then to no half cakes?
The process was not easy. Um, really painful. Like, so the immediate response on, we'll call it day 2, right? So we'll go October 30, is resentment. Um, I resented my wife for like, hey, I'm mad at you because you get to be here to enjoy these conversations. You get to be here for the kids, and I'm out there hustling, grinding, and look what I'm sacrificing. I was pissed at everybody. I was pissed at everyone who hired me because now I'm here frustratedly working on your thing when I know I could be there, uh, enjoying my family. So for the first probably 2 weeks, it was resentment for, man, I feel stuck in this. Like I saw the glimmer of what life should be. I saw what I wasn't, but I had no idea how to get out of that. Um, Fast forward 2-ish weeks, November 13th of that year, I went to uh, Florida, and that was when I met Steve in person, Steve Rutherford. He was having this in-person little mastermind event that I had found out through Instagram, and I decided to go. I decided to take some action because something had to change, and I went there, met Steve, met Al, a couple other people I don't necessarily stay in touch with, but that gave me an example of possibility. So for me, it gave me a very real world example of another man who was just continually burning himself down to find a better version. And it was someone to do the process alongside. So it wasn't like, hey, here's someone who's achieved a lot of awesome things in their life and then realized that wasn't what success was. And then now is on a pursuit of figuring out, hey, how do I really achieve true success? And not just for me, but for the people around me. And that appealed to me. So really step one after getting through the resentment phase was getting around someone who showed me an example of what's possible. Um, fast forward 5 years to where we are now. It's one of the reasons why I spend so much of my time putting out the message of possibility for other people. Because for me, getting around someone else who showed me an example of how it was possible to live their life changed mine. So what I want to do now is be that example for other people where, hey, I don't know if there's some random person who happens to be scrolling an Instagram story or just happens to see me walking, up the street picking up garbage, but like I want that person to be like, hey, that's different. And just to be a little bit of an interruption in everyday life.
Yeah. So, and we've seen people come and go through coaching programs. Like you and I
Yeah.
have been involved in 2 of them together, right?
Yes.
And I'll say one of the fruits of that, you spoke about it, is getting and having audience with someone who has that same mindset, that same attitude about what real success looks like. But you see so many people that go to those events and don't put it to application. Like they
Yeah.
go, they get entertained. I'll call it entertainment. And then the next thing you know, they're 2 years later or a year later or 15 months later, they're at another one starting over again. What do you think was the thing that kept you on track? Like how did you keep pouring back into yourself so that it didn't get off track? I mean, you spoke to your cell phone wallpaper. Like I think that's I don't think you need to, you highlighted it for a second, but I think that's, again, one thing. Like, how do you, but what else do you think kept you on that trajectory of there's, there's a different, there's a difference in what real success looks like?
I think the biggest thing and the first thing I'd recommend for anyone who's looking to do that is figuring out who you are authentically and letting
Mm.
go of everything you thought you were. Because like if I look around at, and I want to be clear, I didn't do that uh, intentionally, to be honest. It wasn't like that was my plan from day two. But looking backwards on it, that I believe was the key, and that's what I'd advocate for anyone to do is if you can first figure out who you are, what really matters to you, and then strip away the ego and the pride, super important to get rid of those two, you can do whatever you want. Because like to me, when I look at the person who continues to go to those coaching programs and not change, they're trying to figure out, how do I get the magic pill from you to just make my life a little bit easier to get the results I want without changing who I am. I don't want to go through the ugly, uncomfortable work of refiguring out who I am and like unlearning the things that took 28 years of my life to figure out. How do I just get the one little magic golden nugget that I'm going to get from an Instagram reel or a TikTok that I can just suddenly have a better life tomorrow? It doesn't work like that. So to me, it's the willingness to literally scrap it all to start over and be like, all right, cool. I'm going to unlearn everything that I thought I knew about myself for the past 30 years of my life, start fresh and be like, who am I? What lights me up? What purpose can I go out and serve? What is my gifting? What am I called for? Then just go out and pursue that. So for me, it's releasing the ego and the pride, not making it about me. Um, I've truly found like spending the first 34 years of my life serving myself first, I achieved a lot of awesome stuff. I made more money than you can possibly want, more stuff. Like I did all the stuff. Removing that and then putting myself second to serving my purpose, I've got more stuff, which sounds crazy to most people if you think like, hey, you've got to focus on the stuff to get the stuff. When I started focusing on serving my purpose and my calling, the stuff just comes at this point. The businesses that I have now are doing better than they were 5 years ago. My relationships, like literally every measurable thing is doing better tenfold than it was 5 years ago when that was my focus and I thought I was King Midas. But like removing myself from the process and just focusing on, hey, how do I serve other people with the gift I've been given has given me even more than I even know what to do with. So that's my 2 cents on that topic.
I, and like I said, we're so aligned in so many things, and that's one of them, right? Is understanding what we were created to do. Like God gave us all a very unique. I mean, it's as unique as our fingerprints, right? It's
Yeah.
we are here to serve a purpose, and from what I see, and when I have conversations with people, you said it, they're not willing to do the hard part of that. How did you do the hard part of that? How did you like understand who Jim was and what is his calling and what are the unique talents that he presents and unique circumstances? Like, how did you do all that?
I'm still doing it, to be clear. And I think that's a really important part is you never actually achieve that, right? It's a continual process of trying to figure out that answer and find little bits and uncover more. It was faith is a huge part of that. It was wonder and amazement. And like once you get over yourself and realize like, hey, you were put on this earth for a purpose, it's really freaking cool to find bits and pieces of that and like play detective and just sort of go outside of yourself, get outside of like your own little bubble, right? Pop that ego and pride, get rid of that, and just keep discovering more cool ways that you can serve and be a gift to the people around you. And I think for me, it was really looking at life with joy and wonderment for the gift that it is. And I've gone through a lot of really difficult things in my life. Um, Loss, you name the thing, I've probably done it. Um, all of them have come back better than they were the first time. And it was a really difficult skill to develop. But I believe that if you spend a lot of intentional time looking backwards, you can start to figure out how many things are working in your favor. And what it does is it starts to give you this new perspective and this new hope that when you're in this present moment, the thing that you think isn't working out for you actually is, you just don't know how yet. So it's given me the perspective to sit in uncomfortable and know, like, hey, this really sucks, or this thing which everyone's freaking out about, or I don't want to do, I'm going to go do it because I know in 6 months from now, it's going to be a really powerful part of my story. So I almost now look for these uncomfortable things to do because I know what they're going to lead to, right? Just historically speaking, if I spent 35 years looking backwards at all these things that I thought were the end of the world or I thought were super important, and I realized what they were actually leading to, and I intentionally put that gratitude and that faith component into it, now it's given me this sort of new skill set to look at where I am right now and realize it's not that bad or it's not that uncomfortable. It's part of the process, and I know it's just a really cool part of the story, which I'm going to find out the rest later. So I think it's that perspective really helped.
Yeah. And like you said, looking backwards, that self-reflection, um, having some conversation with people, I'll ask them, like, in the last 3 years, where do you see like your biggest accomplishments? Right. And most of the time when they do that, they look at it and I don't even know how it happened. Like there's this supernatural thing when you do that you can look back and say, hey, this major accomplishment happened. And I can't even remember how I even got into the situation where that was possible. But you said it's looking at the nuggets of where there was accomplishment, where there is a step forward, where there is growth, and seeing, okay, well, that's how I'm gifted. And,
Right.
and, um, so speaking of that, what do you feel like are your top gifts? How do you feel like you're equipped?
I would say heart would be my number one. Um, Being able to provide comfort to people and understanding and see them for where they are. So grace.
How do you apply those? I mean, you've got multiple businesses,
Mhm.
right? Um, how do you see yourself applying those giftings into those businesses that allow the people that are employed in those businesses to have their version of success?
It's funny you asked that because I was actually thinking that this morning, how I am in a really weird spot in terms of business because I literally don't want anyone to work for me. And that might sound strange, but like I can't reasonably sit here and say, I want to build a life where I can enjoy my friends and family and not be stuck to a 9 to 5 by employing people and sticking them to a 9 to 5.
Oh, that's good.
It doesn't sit well with me that I can build this dream life for myself at the expense of the other people who are in those businesses. So I spend probably more time than I should trying to get the people in my businesses out of those businesses by helping them build their own. I don't like the prospect of a long-term employee who sits in those businesses just because they're stuck or they don't have an option. Hey, if you really truly enjoy this and you want to do it because it's fun, yeah, stay. Please stay. But I don't want anyone to be here because they have to be. So for me, I spend a lot of time talking to the person who's occupying the role rather than the role. And I'm like, hey, look, let's figure out what it is you want your dream life to look like and how we can get you there. And if I can graduate you out of this business to the point that you started your own or you figured out your own investment strategy or you have something else where you can do this for fun, excellent. I love that. But I don't want you to feel stuck in any way working this 9 to 5 so that I can have this freedom at your expense. So it's a really interesting thing to think through. But mostly, I would say the answer to the question is seeing people for who they are and not necessarily the role that they fill. I think when you really look at the person and you know, hey, when Jane Smith shows up to work today, she's also carrying with her the conversation she had with the kids this morning or whatever else is going on in her life. And not that you need to take on everyone else's burdens because it's not your responsibility, but when you can just understand where somebody is and give them the grace to grow and kind of walk alongside them, give them a little bit of loving support and encouragement, uh, be someone who's willing to like jump back in the valley. And that's a thing that I cursed for a long time. I used to be really frustrated about, man, why do I keep working so hard with a good heart and I do all these things and eventually I get tossed back in this valley? And obviously, you know, like running and owning a business, you're going to have those roller coaster days where eventually you got to go down. And I used to curse it a lot. I got into a spot where I started rejoicing in the valleys. And for me, it was an opportunity to go back into that valley to pull somebody back up with me. Because, like, I know, again, we're going to go back to that perspective shift. I'm going to come out of that valley. It's going to be a really awesome story about, hey, what happened in that valley. Once I get to the top of the mountain, I can tell the other people. So it wasn't a fear anymore of, man, I got thrown into a valley. What's going to happen now? It changed into, awesome. I can't wait. I feel like a Rambo paratrooper who, man, throw me into the valley because I'm going to come back out with 4 people on my back. And we're going to tell a really awesome story that's going to inspire 6 more people after that.
I love that. Yeah, because when you open that when you open that conversation, you said I'm in this position where I don't want employees.
Mm.
Right. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs that get to that point for a different reason. They get to that point because they're tired of dealing with the employee. And I
Right.
use that part. I'm using air quotes if you can't see me, like dealing with the employee. But your take is rather than dealing with the employee, right? I'm going to help understand where they are and what they're trying to get to, and then do everything in my power to help them get to there.
Right.
I had a conversation with someone in the organization the other day. I said, you can manage the numbers, but you got to lead the people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think sometimes we get some of that. We leave out the lead part of it, and unless being a leader in an organization, I think the most important part of that is if you're going to lead them, you got to know where you're leading them to, and it just can't be to your vision as the one. You got to be leading them towards theirs. And if you
Yes.
don't have the conversation to see what their vision is, how are you going to lead them? Period. You're just going to end up managing them.
Yeah, you're using
Um,
them.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think another big part of that too is you can't effectively lead people if you can't lead yourself.
Right.
Right. So that's where we come back to getting rid of the ego and the pride, not saying, hey, this is my name up on the wall. Do this because I said so. But I want you to do this because you see me doing it. You just picked it up. Right. Like you pick up those lessons because you see me in the business doing this. And I say a lot of the times, like in my, we'll call it my quote unquote 9 to 5 in the website agency, I do that not because I have to. I do that because I truly enjoy helping people take the stress out of that part of their business so that they can go hang out with their families. I do that for fun. Like I knock on wood, I'm blessed and I really enjoy the fact that I don't have to do that every day, but I do it because I enjoy the process of like meeting someone who has a business, who is frustrated by their digital element or like the lack of systems and structure, and being able to say, sit down, have a conversation, hear their heart, who they are as a person first, then figure out, hey, how do we the systems and processes stuff is pretty simple. Like those are relatively universal across most businesses if you can understand the person. And I truly believe that better people build better businesses. So if you can help the people heal themselves, the business process, that stuff's easy. But like, let's get the person who's in charge in a really good spot first. Then the trickle down effect of that, man, it's easy after that. So it's fun for me to be able to do that now.
So as we close out, we've gone from birthday to leading people out of the business in a great way, helping them achieve their ultimate success. If someone's listening to this, what would you want their ultimate takeaway? Like what's the answer of a stayer that you want them to hear?
Hmm. A lot of directions I could take that. Um, I would encourage them this. When you get home today and you put the key in the front door, I'll get there. Give me a second. When you put that key in the front door and you open the door and you take that first step in, I want you to think about how much of a cake you're coming home to. I want you to think about the impact you're having on your family, the impact you're having on yourself. I want you to think about how you feel, how your family feels. I want you to think about what your life looks like when you do that. Because you can have all the stuff you want, but if you don't have joy in your life, if you don't have purpose in your life, if you don't feel fulfilled and you don't have that actual true freedom to be your authentic self, it's stuff. Like it could be gone in a heartbeat. But the impact that you have on other people, the impact that you have when you're able to walk through life as yourself, you can't measure that and you can't take that away. So I really want you to think about when you come home tonight, like, did you use this day that God gave you to actually make an impact? Or did you just spend those 18 hours doing whatever it is you did on stuff? Because, like, it's a really important part, and we didn't touch on this in this part of the conversation, but in 2008, I was in a bad car accident. And you and I actually talked about this the other day, where I realized in that moment, hey, my life could be over at literally any moment. In a blink of an eye, something so mundane that you've done 1,000 times, it could all change. And you start to realize that, like, hey, this is a gift. And we're alive. You're listening to this right now. For the past X amount of days in a row, thousands, tens of thousands, you've woken up every day. So you start to take for granted that tomorrow morning you're going to wake up. And you skip right past the joy and the gratitude part. Hey, I woke up today. God put breath in my lungs and hope in my heart to go do something. We just get right into our to-do list and all the things that we're supposed to go, run through. But we stop realizing that today is a gift. Right? So it's the intentionality of understanding that you've been given a gift that not a lot of people have. How are you going to use it? Are you going to steward that time well? Or are you just going to waste it doing whatever? So to me, it's the intentionality of, like, understanding when you wake up tomorrow, you've been given a tremendous gift. Invest it wisely.
That's good. That's good. Jim, if people are listening to this and they want to connect with you and learn more about you and all the services you provide, like you are like a Swiss Army knife, like a little bit of everything. Restaurateur, website builder, market guy. Like you kind of get a lot of things. How can they find you?
Jim Sabellico, I'm literally the only one on earth. So if you look up Jim Sabellico, you will find me. But jimsabellico.com, nohalfcakes.com, Jim Sabellico on Instagram. You look for me, you'll find me. I'm not hard to find.
And you bless my day today. And I know that those that are listening will feel the same. And I truly do appreciate you in my life, brother.
Thank you. Likewise, brother. I
Thanks, man.
appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.